Fans of adventure games have been trying to fill the hole left by Telltale Games since their closure, which was odd to me. Telltale's corpse filled the hole they dug for themselves quite nicely. Before Telltale, LucasArts had filled that hole, making their adventure games in which you point and click at objects in a room and combine it with other objects in the room until something happened. Telltale took that lineage, stripped out the puzzles, replaced interactivity with a dialogue well and moral choices, jammed a licensed IP into the chest cavity, and called it an adventure game. And for a while, it worked beautifully. Then it worked less beautifully. Then it worked the way a rusted drain works. Slowly, damply, and with an odor no one can place. By the end, a Telltale game was approximately 6 rooms, a moral choice, and a notification at the top of the screen informing you that a character will remember that. And I was never surprised that they might remember something, because the moral consequence had to happen 1 or 2 rooms down the hallway from the choice. Now we have Dispatch, a game made by former Telltale developers, and I am required by law to mention this, Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad, who looked at the smoldering remains of their former employer and said, "We could do this," and then added, "with Aaron Paul as a bullet point." In a touch of adventure game irony so thick you could spread it on toast, you play a man who sits at a desk and points and clicks on things on his computer until the credits roll. Then your lunch break comes. You watch cutscenes, you make moral choices and sarcastic jokes, you field off the unwanted sexual advances of your coworkers, and then send them out to rescue more cats and escort old ladies across streets. This sounds like less. It is, somehow, more. Dispatch looked at adventure games, which really didn't do much besides tell a story, and decided to cut away nearly everything that doesn't do that. You want to sit? Sit. We have designed the narrative around the lumbar support of a second-hand office chair. You want to click? Click. You have an Excel spreadsheet designed by a comic book writer. And then, to its immense and frankly irritating credit, it worked. Our protagonist, Robert, is every jaded office worker who ever developed sarcasm as a coping mechanism because genuine emotion would require vulnerability, and vulnerability would require therapy. 2 women will even fall in love with him over the course of the game, despite him possessing the romantic charisma of a dentist midway through reconsidering his entire career. A man who has just realized he hates teeth. And this is fine. Something about a man sitting at a desk, telling more capable people where to go, taking his lunch break alone, and being inexplicably loved anyway. Something about that just feels correct. Congratulations to the former Telltale developers. You made a thing. It functions. I want to be annoyed with it. I really do. But I'm not.
Obviously, I love him. He's my dad. What does that mean? Just say what you want to say.
It's just, when you add obviously, it feels a little less obvious.
Robert Robertson pilots a mech and owns father issues so textbook they could be assigned in a Neon Genesis Evangelion fanfiction. What is it about giant robots that always serves as a metaphor for mental illness and childhood abandonment? This has now happened enough times across enough different pieces of media that I'm beginning to suspect the mechs are not actually robots at all, and that the entire plot device is one very long letter to a father who didn't come to a baseball game.
But the only breakthrough I need right now is the location of Shroud.
I'm not telling you shit, you fucking loser!
How did Robert get into a conversation about his own issues with a criminally tied to a chair to interrogate about Shroud's location? A criminal who is exceptionally good at remaining calm given the situation, asking follow-up questions and getting personal info from the person interrogating him.
Wait!
I have neighbors. Use your inside voice and just tell me where Shroud is.
Why would you reveal your secret identity and address to one of Shroud's goons by bringing him back to your apartment to interrogate if you're also worried about your neighbors? Also, Robert just leaves the guy here when he heads out to confront Shroud. Every villain should know exactly who Mecha Man is and where to find him if he keeps his famous mech in his apartment parking space like this.
It was like so much piss. Because your dad was wearing shorts, so
Hey.
it just kept...
I get it.
If only Robert were this dismissive toward all the too much dialogue characters he meets later.
Cool dick.
With the amount of nudity in this game, I'm taking a sin off for including the censor bar as a graphic option. Not only is it funnier, it made editing this to be safe for YouTube way easier. However, I only recorded the game censored, so this does create a problem for the Patreon version where my videos are supposed to be uncensored. By the way, if you haven't joined my Patreon, go and do so right now. It's only $3 a month and you get classic sins, DLC sins which are exclusive, and game sins early. And soon you'll be getting video game movie sins.
Good news, buddy! Shroud says he just wants the Astro Pulse, which we all know isn't really yours anyway.
If Shroud only wanted the Astro Pulse, he could have taken it easily from Mecha Man's apartment. He leaves it sitting out with his car keys. Shroud could have sent Invisigal to steal it instead of tricking Mecha Man into this ambush.
8-9 seconds of damage before critical.
Oh hey, Boss Man says if you're planning on diverting pulse power to the boosters, it won't work.
Shroud represents one of those characters who wins everything when they have a bit of prep time, like Batman. Only in his case, prep time is just a few seconds, because that is the way the game treats him, as being so smart he can predict everything before it happens. Like when he knew Mecha Man would try and escape by flying away and had a bomb placed on the mech, but somehow knew the Astro Pulse wouldn't be destroyed by the explosion, only lost somewhere in LA, a sprawling city where it would be hard to find something as tiny as the Astro Pulse. But that was apparently his plan, to lose the Astro Pulse and have to desperately look for it.
Most heroes avenge their family. You did the opposite. You killed their legacy. How disappointed would your dad be if he were here right now?
In this universe, people are upset when the hero doesn't live up to the cliché origin story. Watching the news report of your life going to shit behind storefront glass is a pretty old-fashioned way of getting the point across. Robert has a phone, you know, and would probably be watching that. And it would make way more sense if these guys would try and mug him for that phone instead of stealing TVs from the store right next to him.
I control the fire.
The fire?
And the flame. And my skin does not burn. I am Flambe.
Flambe sets himself on fire whenever he fights, so why would he panic when set on fire here by Robert? And why would it only burn his eyebrows off?
Shit, yeah, you're right.
You can tell a huge difference in acting ability between the YouTubers they hired to voice characters versus the actual actors.
Don't you worry about it, Robert Robertson.
How do you know my name?
I don't know, maybe Blonde Blazer checked your mailbox at your apartment.
Here on official business. How I know your name, the proposition I mentioned right before you spit in my mouth.
Robert got his ass kicked by a bunch of low-level thugs, spit in Blonde Blazer's mouth, and then kissed her without consent. This interview couldn't have gone worse, and she still offers Robert a job.
Robert, I would like to make you an offer. In exchange for dispatching and mentoring some of our rookie heroes, SDN can make you Mecha Man again. But this time with all the resources that a company as big as ours has at their disposal.
There's really no reason to go this far to recruit someone for a dispatching job. The heroes being sent out into danger are the real talent to be scouted.
Wait, so you want me to sit in an office and dispatch heroes?
Steam, the last remaining wetland of digital entertainment, is lousy with job simulators. Games with the tedium of operating a forklift, managing a convenience store, selling drugs, flipping houses, or pressure washing a suburban driveway, all with an attention to detail that real workers of these jobs likely do not bring with them. Dispatch is one of those games. Only the job is routing superheroes across a city map, and no one is pressure washing anything. Robert has been demoted by circumstance into the Uber app for people who can fly. He's going from being independent to being under the wing of soulless corporate office work. The weight of this transition never fully lands because the game promises Robert, early and often, that his mech will eventually be repaired. This is the carrot. Robert walks around with it in his pocket instead of chasing it. Tasks materialize on the city map. You assess hero statistics, listen to them bitch about every choice you make, then decide who goes, then listen to them bitch and whine about that. It gets complicated. Correctly. You unlock coffee, which can be used to rouse a resting hero back into rotation immediately. Heroes develop powers that apply bonuses to their stats, and team-ups emerge. A system that initially resembles a Discord call reveals itself to have joints and tendons. It won't convert anyone, but I come to believe it's preferable, at least to walking slowly through a room containing 4 interactive objects and clicking in all 4 of them, and that being the sum total of your progression. It's better to do one small thing well than to keep doing the large thing that everyone agreed years ago had stopped working. You just left a seriously injured man to climb down from a billboard on his own.
Unexpected things happen every day.
That's the voice of Travis Willingham, once again playing a person in uniform, or costume in this case. Man, I haven't used that sin in ages.
Take your clothes off.
I've never felt silly wearing this.
Until now.
Yeah, I was trying to imply that with the silence.
Dispatch excels at getting character development across without a monologue, then makes fun of itself for doing that.
Profesh.
Are you serious?
Invisigal can only remain invisible while holding her breath, which is limited by her asthma. She was just invisible before Robert and Blazer entered the office, and she was invisible for several minutes while they had an extended conversation about Robert keeping his identity secret. So a couple minutes straight despite her asthma, and she will struggle to hold it that long ever again. She didn't even seem out of breath once her invisibility ended.
Invisigal. She is part of the Phoenix program. We take former supervillains, such as herself, and rehabilitate them to re-enter society to use their powers for... Are those my earrings?
Who proposed allowing a private company to rehabilitate supervillains? Imagine someone arguing that we rehab violent criminals by having them do police work.
So, you two fuck or what?
Well, I'm wet. I see why you like him. Look at that trip. What does that look? Best Buy Fight Club? Fucking hot.
Remember how I said there are 2 women Robert can romance? The writers put their thumb on the scale for Invisigal by making her the flirtatious alt-girl goon bait in comparison with Blonde Blazer, who is just a normal office worker with superpowers.
Yep. We're all about diversity. Lana works in the mailroom. From a different galaxy altogether.
How would you even operate a non-diverse superhero office? The Justice League was diverse in the 60s. Heroes are made up of humans, robots, aliens, and other dimensional beings. Hell, there's probably already multiverse versions of you and Robert that are black working here.
Bruh, I almost went in my pants.
That's 2 bro code violations, taking the urinal right next to someone, and then talking to them, and add a 3rd for requesting a fist dab.
Hey, you think that's why they call me Roy? Like I'm on steroids? Cause they think I'm some kind of a juice head?
Royd works in an office full of metahumans. Having a Rob Liefeld physique is easier explained by superpowers and how much trin you're injecting.
It's the powers. I can move 50 times faster than the average person, but I didn't realize until it was too late. And I was aging 50 times faster when I used my powers.
Did you reach the biological age of 80 before you realized the drawback of your super speed, or did you think it was heavy drinking and smoking? Because most would have clocked that by the time you were looking 40 at age 25.
Hey team, this is your dispatcher, Robert Robertson. I'm starting my first shift.
Tell me that's not your real fucking name, bitch! You can't be this shook on your first day, come on!
All of the Phoenix team members who ran into Robert last night don't recognize him as Mecha Man despite sounding and acting exactly like him. They know former professional heroes managed the dispatch, and Mecha Man is now famously out of commission.
Very clever. Yeah, but it sounds dumb to say, so everybody calls her Coop. She was an assassin for the mob, then went independent.
You allow assassins with high body counts into this rehab program? I bet that went over well with their victims' families.
Can I get ice down here, please?
What does that mean?
She asked for a tap-in. We got access to security cams of SDN subscribers all over our territory.
Can you go into more detail on that massive violation of privacy that people sign up for unaware? Or is that going to be swept under the rug for gameplay and plot reasons?
Those long ones with the cream inside.
Oh, you like a dick donut?
No. They're called...
You love big, long, cream-filled dick donuts. I got it, dude. You like your dick donuts up in your throat, in your ass, both.
Yep.
If Robert still had his mech, I would expect him to punt Invisigal across town just like he did to Toxic for the same rambling exposition. What kind of criminal robs a donut store using weapons like this? A simple gun would have been better. You're going to get nothing but today's cash register take at best. Invisigal's clothing turned invisible along with her, but not the blood on her face.
I could use the overhead sprinklers to short out his blaster.
Or possibly electrocute both of them since he's currently pinning her down. The sprinklers shorted out the thug's blaster, but not the one he dropped on the floor which the old donut maker picked up and just used.
Granny doesn't even know how to shoot that thing. Take out the thief first. He's the only one with his finger on the trigger.
The old guy just shot it at them a second ago.
Granny's clearly a fan of his own work. Oh, really wasn't expecting to see that. He's kind of caked up.
Apparently this is one of those comedy weapons that doesn't kill but causes visual gags. Why were they so worried about it killing Invisigal just a moment ago? Sonar, who has incredible hearing, doesn't overhear Invisigal discussing Robert being Mecha Man simply because he was using a coffee grinder. Come to think of it, I don't believe his super hearing ever proves useful even once. He's mainly useful for being a monster and flying.
You gonna eat those Twinks?
Let us harmonize our monotones, Moist Critical. And yes, I will be eating those Twinks. Waterboy, the janitor, has the power to spit water onto electronics and not destroy those electronics. Blonde Blazer is dating Phenomenon, meaning she's really into autistic guys and HR office code violations.
Where the Astro Pulse at?
Lost in the blast while I was flying. No clue where it landed. I spent a couple weeks after it happened trying to track it down.
It powered the whole suit.
The Astro Pulse is the only piece that went missing from Robert's mech. It should be noted that the Astro Pulse was inside the cockpit with Mecha Man, so any explosion that would have sent it flying across town would have liquefied Robert.
I was thinking about it over the weekend, and I'm going to cut someone from the Z-Team.
The entire point of the Phoenix team is to rehabilitate former supervillains into heroes. Why would you cut one of them to send a message when they're all following the program to the letter? I think they all volunteered for this, no less.
The way to win this leaderboard
game is to not lose, right?
Yeah.
How do you figure sabotaging the other members of the Phoenix team while on calls will bump you up in the leaderboards and keep you from being cut if they know you're doing it?
All of you in this room, like the Phoenix, have set this program ablaze with your bullshit. I'm pushing the dumpster fire away from the building while we figure out if you want to take this seriously.
The team was actually doing pretty decently the other day until they learned one of them was going to be cut today and ruin morale.
I'm here to help you lift the curse of potential by getting you to fucking do something with it.
Except for one of you, who's going to be cut no matter how inspiring this speech is.
You're all part of the Phoenix program. Any of you know what a Phoenix is?
Ooh, city in Arizona.
Yeah, the sweltering ballsack of America.
Phoenix is also a lame-ass band my lame-ass roommate listens to.
You're late.
I like that band.
You would.
Weren't you two at each other's throats on the street right before this meeting was called?
I have fucking villain powers. I can turn invisible and skulk in the shadows. My powers let me steal shit and watch famous people fuck. Being a villain is my fate.
You were on a team with a demon from hell, a bat monster, and a flying knife assassin, and you're whining about how invisibility makes you destined to be a villain.
You make your own destiny.
Where'd you get that? Kung Fu Panda?
Liking.
Boomer. I think it's in Trolls 2 also.
All of the pop culture references are throwing off the world building, because this is clearly not the same world I live in, even though they share the same movies. Why not activate the jewelry store sprinkler system? You already know it shorts out his lightning gun.
Got it. On the count of 3, I'm going to turn on the main overhead lights, which should temporarily blind him.
Giving you a chance to take him out.
Why do you need to blind the guy with the lights when Invisigal can turn invisible and catch him by surprise anytime she likes?
These two are now tied for last place. Who do we cut?
So are we sending the person we cut to prison, or just letting them return to supervillain activities? Because that's an easy to foresee eventuality here. If Invisigal's wet dream is anything to go by, finding her clit would be a whole other level of difficulty with her sporadic invisibility. And what happens if you choke her? I'm sure the writer has already explored these questions in his own head. Blazer wants to fill the now open spot on the team with either her ex, Phenomenon, who now suffers from crippling depression after his breakup, or Waterboy, a janitor. Both are terrible options, but it makes me assume that lawyers and lawsuits are not a thing in this universe. One of them needs therapy and the other is clearly autistic and has no combat experience. And what's the point of replacing the former criminal with a non-criminal?
Did you just give me an up-down?
You ever jerk off in this thing?
You low, Vizzy.
I mean, obviously you have, right?
Invisigal is a diva main in Overwatch, isn't she? This episode is turning into a hentai real quick.
I'm not that good of a kisser.
Now it just straight up is a hentai.
I had a dream last night that we were fucking.
This is female dialogue clearly written by a man to depict their ideal woman.
So it won't be weird with your ex-boyfriend hanging around?
I mean, he's already hanging around, so he may as well be doing some good.
Won't Phenomenon working for the woman who broke his heart and causes depression only, increases depression? Having one of those regular mid-shift office job showers, are we?
Earlier that day, Blazer and I had breakfast at the rim of an active volcano. Then we made love.
I don't need to hear your sex stories.
We never had intercourse. My alien genitals were not compatible with hers.
That sounds like a much better reason for dumping him than Blonde Blazer ever gave.
I wish to make love to you again.
Again?
Though this time, I will avoid squeezing the blood out of you.
Phenomenon is easily the best thing in this game. I wish he was the one coming onto Robert more. There's better chemistry between them too. I fully support the idea of these heroes having to wear body cams, but since when can the dispatcher see from a hero's point of view? Just the other night, Robert had to hack security cameras to see what was going on in the jewelry store to help Invisigal. She's also wearing nothing on her head or body that allows for a camera, and she's wearing it inside a movie theater. So they're technically breaking the law by recording this right now. You can choose between spending time here with Blazer or Invisigal. For Blazer, this is entering into another office romance right after breaking up with a different coworker, and in Invisigal's case, this would be like dating your probation officer. Episode 5 begins with a flashback to when the police cleared a mall that was on fire so Mecha Man could go in and deal with a culprit. Flambe seemed way more effective back then than he does now as a hero.
There's a poll going around on which superhero you used to be. Person who guesses right wins $936.
Dispatchers are former heroes themselves. Just how many retired heroes are there that match Robert's voice and physique and also have no powers that would make this difficult to figure out?
Chill out, Dad.
I never had a dad.
I know.
Fuck that's supposed to mean.
She's a devil from hell. She's more marginalized than you are.
But if we kill the queen, we rot the hive.
You would do that? Kill Shroud? Because you might get the chance.
I won't kill Shroud, says Robert, who earlier punted a man he didn't even know was superpowered through a wall with his mech.
I'm gonna get the grid back up and running. Be ready because shit's gonna be insane the minute the lights turn back on.
The city power grid goes down during the second shift, and for some unknown reason it's a dispatcher's job to get it going again by hacking power stations. Why don't any of the other dispatchers do this? It's only Robert hacking the power back online.
You had a good time eating popcorn too loud while I sat silently next to you?
The silence was the best part.
You might like me loud sometime.
Was that about sex?
Yes. Nearly every single line of Invisigal's dialogue has been about sex.
Loser ass bitch of a hero into our supervillain bar.
If all the villains hang out and drink in one bar, why don't heroes just raid it periodically? The only people you're gonna find there are wanted criminals.
She temporarily blinded me!
What you mean temporarily? Bitch, you blind forever.
After the massive bar fight with supervillains concluded, did any of them wind up arrested? Because it seems like the corporate heroes just left to get tacos instead of doing their job. It doesn't matter if you choose to reveal Robert's superhero identity here or not, since they'll all learn it in the next episode anyway.
So, what now? Orgy time?
Are sex jokes your tism or something?
Shut it down!
Maybe run an automated test before you place a human pilot in danger. Robert has proven pretty good at surviving inside the cockpit of an exploding mech.
I cannot recreate the astral pulse. Too much power. Too small a size. No pulse mean I can't make the man mecha.
Can't you just make the astro pulse larger? It doesn't have to fit on a keychain after all.
I guess I'm coming around on her.
You coming where?
I'm coming. Jesus Christ.
Wonder Woman's creator didn't fetishize her this much. Why exactly does Robert's Mecha Man helmet have a glass visor when his head doesn't even go inside it? The cockpit is in the chest. Just knock. You were in front of his door anyways.
This is your family photo area? Kind of morbid. Which I'm kind of into.
You're into dudes who are messed up in all the same ways as the writer. We get it.
Wait. It's not destroyed?
Nope. And a bunch of B-grade villains have been trying to unlock its power only to end up blowing their asses off like you did. Then they sell it on the next sucker and the same shit.
It turns out that the original Astro Pulse wasn't destroyed and has been floating through the hands of several villains who can't make it work since it keeps blowing them up, which is odd, because the problem with the prototype Astro Pulse is that it blows things up because it isn't a proper recreation. The actual Astro Pulse is supposed to do the opposite.
Skylaw Katie runs it now. 3 generations that family's been trying to finger me.
What are they accusing you of?
You're cute.
Haha, sex. The ultimate punchline.
Shit.
That's more than shit. You need a fucking army.
I'll go. Can't shoot what you can't see.
You weren't even capable of hiding from a single guy in a dark jewelry store without help.
But she's not. Robert doesn't need to keep going out there with no powers, putting his life on the line to make up for assholes like you. He doesn't need to be Mecha Man to be a hero.
Chase, please.
Wait, Robert's Mecha Man?
Surprising, I know. He only sounds exactly like him, has the same body proportions, 0 powers, and he showed up at work the day after Mecha Man was forced to retire. How many former superheroes could he have been?
You don't know anything about me.
I know you're a liar, criminal. I know you're fucking dangerous. What else do I need to know?
Chase may not technically be a boomer, but he's acting like one.
Visigal, look.
What's up?
Like the frogs. From that thing, you know?
This game and these characters are way too young to be referencing memes this old.
Another thing I can't do anymore. Fuck. Maybe it's why I say the word so much.
I don't say this often, but the writers of this really needed to get laid. You can't make this many jokes about the same topic without it being something you're coping with. After being told off by Chase, Invisigal went to the dock to retrieve the Astro Pulse from the warehouse on her own, but the entire place is under assault by villains who want to get their hands on it as well, which you would think would warrant a superhero response given the size of the fight. And how the hell did dozens of rival villains all find out about it at the same time tonight?
Hey, I'm getting a huge energy reading coming from the captain's quarters.
Right.
Robert can hack into the security of the dock warehouse, which apparently has a tech to scan for energy signals nearby and use it to locate the Astro Pulse up above.
Keep your eyes peeled for invisible. Looks like she might know something we don't.
Keep your eyes peeled for the girl who turns invisible.
Busy, look out, behind you.
How the hell do you have Soliton radar in this place? It can't be tech Invisigal is wearing because you had to hack cameras to locate the thief in the jewelry store.
In the safe.
The safe? I don't know how to open a fucking safe.
Fuck. All right, let me see what I can do.
Why would you keep your wall safe connected to the internet so anyone can hack it?
See you. You're good. Just take one step at a time.
Turn invisible and sneak out with it. It's the one thing you do. Invisigal walked right past Shroud on the stairs, who was just standing there. Dude is more invisible than her.
Please. Vizzy, hey, listen to me.
Invisigal has smoked far too many cigarettes for me to buy that she's in danger of asphyxiating to this smoke grenade.
Keep up.
No!
Chase uses his power to rescue Invisigal. Though I have to say, his power is only supposed to be 50 times the speed of a human at the price of 50 times the aging. The average human sprinting speed is 12 miles per hour, so 600 miles per hour is about his top speed, which, while fast, wouldn't be fast enough for the rescue depicted here. You have a camera feed at this random location Chase collapsed at?
Beer?
I'm 20. I can't fucking buy beer.
Yeah, but you aged 50 times faster and you were using your power liberally back then, so you should look old enough to buy booze. But weirdly, that downside only seems to have come into effect later on in your life.
I got you your favorite.
Dispatch, brought to you by Hostess Twinkies.
But I'm not cutting Invisigal.
We don't kick people when they're down. We lift them up, and I believe of her what I believe of all of you.
Invisigal couldn't stay invisible for more than a few seconds. Now she can sit and listen for several minutes as Robert gives a speech about cutting her from the team or not. Girl, wear a bra. You're a superhero. There's a lot of running and jumping across the city that you need support for.
I was there that night.
What are you saying?
I never ran with crews. Always did my own thing, but my asthma was getting worse, and they had an augment that could increase my lung capacity.
Invisigal had joined up with Shroud to receive an augment to increase her diminishing lung capacity. Her job was to plant a bomb on Mecha Man during Shroud's ambush, which she did. But seeing Robert's face triggered her empathy instead of a sex joke, and she quit right after. And then her augment conveniently stopped working. So she joined the Phoenix program the very next day and eventually ran into Robert again. Then proceeded to fall hard for the guy she screwed over and hasn't felt guilty about until just now. Unless all those sex jokes were her way of dealing with the remorse. Your augment increased your lung capacity, but it didn't mean you should start smoking. You still had asthma after all. God help Robert if his lady gets time stop. Of all the bars in LA to get some drinks at, Robert went back to the villain bar where they had a huge fight just a few nights ago. Glass him from The Wolf Among Us makes a return, and this time it's not an extreme violence option you choose on accident, it's an extreme violence option you choose purposefully. Well, it is a villain bar, but the service wasn't that bad. Shroud estimated that Robert would be depressed enough to come drinking at this bar tonight, and even brought the team member he cut with him as a henchman, making cutting that person that much more of a bad decision.
Your father was the last person to touch this bullet. And now, there's a 16.5% chance it touches you next.
You honestly expect me to believe that you held onto Robert's father's revolver all these years and never reloaded it just so you could be dramatic if you ever had need to use it on his son?
Gross.
I'm sure Invisigal would be into that.
Your invisible girlfriend stole my astral pulse to give it to you. Where the fuck is it?
Shroud is so smart he should already know that Robert doesn't, since she would have likely given him the astral pulse and he would be Mecha Man again. And also, according to the twist, Invisigal still works for him, so he should know exactly what she's doing. How did Robert miss Invisigal pocketing the pulse? He was watching that same camera feed that night, and Shroud was watching from the corner back there, so he had to have seen it. Blonde Blazer somehow knew Robert was in trouble and exactly where he was, even though there was nothing to indicate either.
See that bar on the top left? That's Torrance, or what's left of it. We need to stop the Red Ring before they wipe us off the map.
How exactly do you equate the state of the city to a health bar that updates in real time? What actually happens when the health bar depletes? Is LA just gone at that point?
I need you to be a superhero.
With the city overrun with the Red Ring and the Phoenix team unable to keep up with calls, Robert throws in Waterboy, the janitor who has no experience dealing with anything more dangerous than an overplugged AC adapter. There's a new mechanic added for this section, where if a team you dispatch has too high of a certain stat, then the job is instantly failed. It makes no sense that they can somehow be overqualified for this. The power dies in the dispatch office and Royd catches Invisigal in the repair room, presumably trying to steal the mech for Shroud. The thing is, if Invisigal were a traitor and secretly working for the Red Ring, it would make more sense for her to turn over the Astro Pulse to Shroud than try to steal the mech with it. On the other end, if she were trying to help by installing it in the mech, it would make more sense to turn it over to Royd or Robert instead of doing it herself. And turning off the power only helps the Red Ring, so I'm not sure why she would do that. Basically, since Invisigal can actually be a traitor or trying to help based on your decisions, her actions have to be real stupid to be flexible.
I moved your Mecha Man suit to the rec room. She tried to steal your mech suit.
Where did you catch Invisigal again? You just finished saying you caught her messing with the mech, but then you mentioned hiding the mech somewhere else entirely.
You brought the Astro Pulse. You already do enough.
You don't know what's coming.
What are you talking about?
She bring them here.
You can find this place on Google Maps. Shroud didn't need Invisigal to lead the Red Ring here. Shroud wants the pulse, not the mech. Why would Shroud and the Red Ring come to the dispatch office? They know Invisigal has the Astro Pulse, not Robert. And if they followed her here, they could have attacked her on the street before she arrived.
I just don't understand why you wouldn't tell me.
I was worried Shroud would come after you.
Well, he did.
So if I gave it to you, he'd have the pulse right now.
You went to the dock to get the pulse so Robert could get his mech working again. Then decided after retrieving it that giving it to him would put him in too much danger. But then you came here to get his mech working again. What was your plan exactly?
What are you asking me?
Can you just put his dick away? Feels like the dignified thing to do.
This office job feels more like horny college antics than anything else. They left the test Astro Pulse inside the mech even though the last one nearly killed Robert. Why do evil geniuses always build spider robots? Also, what does Shroud use to power his mech? because I was under the impression you need the Astro Pulse for something like this, and this thing walks all over Robert's mech in terms of abilities but runs off a weaker power system.
Your dad said he'd help me build a mech if I helped him build the Astral Pulse. Just another promise he didn't come through on.
If Shroud built the original Astro Pulse, why not just build another instead of going through all of this? If Roy got close to recreating it, then surely he could.
Well, does your little app predict me beating your ass?
Shit, he's looking at my dialogue choices.
You think this little fucking Lucky Charm is a match for me?
He's got a special move. See ya.
Just because his dick is always exposed and Punch Up literally punches people in the dick doesn't make him Toxic's weakness. He's every man's weakness.
Been more insulted in my life. You fire me, a literal assassin, for some moronic bumfuck bat boy? He shits in the parking lot. Did you know that?
The worst performing hero in SPN can now go toe-to-toe with Mecha Man and Blonde Blazer simultaneously thanks to some unspecified augment from Shroud.
Hey, we're your friends. Please, this isn't you. Help us stop Shroud and earn your spot back on the Z team.
That is pretty hypocritical to offer her the spot back on the team only now that she's become a villain again. She also sort of destroyed half the city, so maybe she shouldn't be allowed back on the team. Blonde Blazer gets zapped back into the building and knocked out. Then everyone else gets their ass handed to them by Shroud and are about to be killed when finally, something Shroud didn't predict happens. Blazer gives her powers a chase, which means she got up from being knocked out, deciding that instead of continuing the fight herself, that she would give her powers to the hospitalized elderly man so he could do it for her. I don't blame Shroud for failing to predict that one. You can give me the option for these two special moves referencing famous moves from other media, but if Robert doesn't say the line, it only disappoints me. How exactly did Shroud get Robert's dog? He was with Chase in the infirmary.
If I'm killing this dog, I'm gonna be sure he dies.
I'll do whatever you want.
Have none of them ever dealt with a hostage situation before? They all instantly stand down and surrender. Also, I hate to say it, but a dog isn't worth trading the city for.
Invisigal. And she'd steal that soft heart of yours like everything else she's robbed. That's why we planted her here.
That clearly wasn't your plan because Invisigal didn't help you get the pulse and in fact kept it from you after retrieving it. And just how could you have guessed Robert would go to work for the SDN after his mech was destroyed? And why was it even necessary? Invisigal found the Astro Pulse location on her own, as did you. He never led you to it. And if she was still under payroll, why did she bring the Astro Pulse to Robert?
I just want a fair exchange.
Just don't be an idiot and try to give me the shitty prototype.
Since Shroud had already figured Robert might give him the prototype pulse, you can give him both instead, since apparently it's impossible to figure out which is which. And then Robert baits him into guessing instead of just being patient and taking it somewhere to test. How does plugging the Astro Pulse into Shroud's head power up the augments of all of his gang? The Astro Pulse powers only what it's plugged into, but somehow powers all their stuff wirelessly. Shroud chose wrong, causing himself and the Red Ring to get violently ill. Invisigal, somewhat predicting that he would take a shot at Robert, was standing in front of him to take the bullet. She went invisible a while ago and even grabbed a gun from one of Shroud's men. She could have blasted him before he inserted the pulse, disarmed him, taken the dog. She had all these options and she chose to be an invisible bullet shield. Heroes don't kill people. They leave them alive for sequels. If someone takes a bullet for someone else in slow motion, then that person should die as a consequence. Why else slow the moment down for the impact if you're going to have them be just fine right after?
What do you think? Did they earn a pardon?
You can choose to pardon whichever hero turned villain due to being cut, even though they were unrepentant during the fight and had to be taken out, and just goes to show how stupid it was that they were cut in the first place.
That was quite a kiss she laid on you. Gonna have to talk to HR about that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
I'm joking, Robert.
Technically, Robert is independent again now that his suit's fixed. He can make out with the writer's imaginary girlfriend all he wants without it being an issue. And I'm sure the writer gets off on it too. Thanks for watching this very late video. I've been a little busy, getting married, buying a house, and I still have a honeymoon to go on. But content will be picking up a lot soon, seeing as I'll have house payments to make. And speaking of income, you can help increase mine by subscribing on Patreon to watch exclusive videos like my recent one covering Capcom's classic Dino Crisis and several others. I'm even going to send video game movies there soon. Special thanks to patrons Squirrel, Victoria, Vanilla Pixel, Chris, Solomon McGuire, Roman Are You Sleeping, Xavier Destalis, Notorious SKP, Max Headroom, Azenith the Succubus, Musical Pumpkin, Castlemania, Zinro, Dennis O'Brien, Malrose, Donald Talbot, Montezuma, Sky is Under, PK Reed, Eric Kisser, Erpel Jaeger, Church Kiones, S. Venus, Mario Neto, Ben Hottie, Biohazard, and Charmsy.